Hello, SEEK Bytes listeners. Season 3 is coming shortly, but the SEEK Bytes crew are keen to release some irregular episodes based on what's having a more immediate effect in the tech world. Our Season 3 will contain lots of great content that we've recorded on key topics and with special guests, but now and then we're going to drop an episode that is timely to events that may be affecting you or our tech world right now. Today's episode is the first of those special ad hoc episodes. Stay tuned and click follow to make sure you don't miss out on these special drop episodes going forward, as well as our regular weekly drop of Season 3, which kicks off on the 22nd of April. Welcome back to SEEK Bytes.
Welcome back to another episode of SEEK Bytes, the podcast for engineers by engineers. Today we're going to be talking about the Axios hack that happened recently and supply chain attacks in general. Special guest with us today is Eldar Marcussen from the SEEK security team. And I'm also joined by Will.
Hello.
And Elliot.
Hello, hello.
Eldar.
Hello.
How's it going?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Excited to be talking about this. I think it's probably a good point to start would just be get a little bit of a background on yourself, what you do at SEEK, your history with security maybe?
Well, thanks for having me, first of all. I work in the SEEK offensive security team. Similarly, I suppose to sports, you might have an offense team and a defense team. The offensive team tries to score points. The defense team tries to prevent the opponents from scoring points. Within security, that sort of means that one team tries to break in and the other team tries to stop people from breaking in. We essentially assess the security posture by seeing if we can break in, because if we can break into things, then other people could break into things as well.
Do you run into trouble with that because there's a certain amount of insider knowledge? So if you know all the ins and outs of the inner workings of the system, it kind of gives you an advantage that other people wouldn't have? Or does that just mean it's easier to identify?
I'd say both. There are times where the inside knowledge does clearly give us an advantage, but there's also potentially risk with insiders. People working for companies as disgruntled employees or people working for the company that have access to privileged information who could get compromised directly. And then that information is available to attackers as well. So it is an advantage. It's certainly an advantage when we were assessing the risk to determine, how much of a problem is that. That gives us a much better understanding as opposed to, say, if you used an external consultancy, they might come in and say, oh, this is a high risk because we have a risk matrix. But we could then sort of adjust that and say, actually, in the context of SEEK, this is a much bigger problem. That's a much less of a problem. Typically because people in the offensive security space often focus on the technical merits of something as opposed to the business or privacy impact of something. And privacy, obviously, for SEEK is a huge concern, which would let us change risk ratings appropriately.
How long have you been working at SEEK and in the kind of security space?
Since I was a teenager, really, and sort of messing with computers in ways that maybe you shouldn't. Professionally, I've been in the security space for closer to 20 years.
Wow.
Currently been at SEEK 6 years in about a week. So,
When you were messing around with things as a teenager, was it more like lineback security? How did you get into the offensive space in particular?
perhaps a lot of it came from sort of text files you'd find on a BBS, dating myself here, where people would talk about hacking or breaking in or sort of Trojan or password cracking. And I think perhaps maybe as a part of getting access to systems or learning, if I detour here a little bit, today if you want to learn about security, you can go online, you can search something, you can usually download like a Docker image, a virtual machine, find some examples and maybe a book about it, and you can explore on your laptop and you can learn that way. When I was a teenager, if you wanted to learn Unix or WAX or VMS, again dating myself, you might have to borrow access on a mainframe somewhere because those things didn't exist as downloadable. The ability to learn were very much tied to sort of, I suppose, access, and the way that people wrote about how they would get access would generally be like guessing passwords. So in the old days, people might sit with the modem, they'd dial every number in the local area code and try admin at any login prompt that they got to see whether or not they got access. And I think that just lends you into offense. There was very little write-ups about, reading logs or writing malware detections, because antivirus wasn't really a great big industry at that point either. Maybe that's why. Maybe I just enjoy sort of trying to break the rules.
It's a very unique and interesting aspect of engineering. I think it takes a special kind of person to do security stuff. And every time I've dabbled in security, it's just such a far detachment from what we do, like architecting systems. We're trying to build things and you're trying to break them.
It's perhaps sort of thinking about it differently. I mean, I started as a software developer, went into system administration, then finally security. And when you're on the other side, it's a lot of what are the things I need to do to make these things talk together or make this work. Make this button do what it's supposed to do. That's like your objective. That's your goal. That's what you're chasing. Arguably, probably where you get your dopamine hit from as well. Whereas as a hacker, you're sort of like, how do I make this button do something that it wasn't intended to do?
So that you can stop people from doing it later, or is that just is that like once you break it, you then decide where you want to take it? Do you exploit it? Do you fix it? Is that kind of?
I usually exploit it to demonstrate the impact, but then, we either hand it over to an engineering team or we hand it over to the security team to say, like, do fix this. It's not just a case of like, I did it, let's, walk away from the mess I've made. There's a saying that goes, offense informs defense. So whatever sort of we see people do, whether it's internally with our team or whether it's, attackers on the internet, if we see certain behavior, we do try to adopt our defenses to accommodate for that. So I suppose defense is perhaps more of a reactive game and offense is perhaps more of a creative game.
I guess for me, it makes me think of like the different type of hacker you are, whether you're hacking things or trying to break things ethically, or like I guess in the Axios recent thing, people are doing it maliciously, trying to exploit, trying to gain, have a certain gain towards it.
The incentives are obviously very different for an attacker, usually monetary. And I think that's where it changes from other activities. So complete sidebar here. In security, there's often a lot of talk of like, how do we get better metrics, statistics? How do we, if we look at it, and a lot of times people do a comparison to the medical industry, whether it's professionalization or whether it's metrics, and they're like, you can come up with a solution to, polio. It's a vaccine, you deploy it, and you have a number that says, we've reduced polio worldwide 80, 90, whatever sort of percentage it is. But the difference is polio doesn't then go and change how it operates, whereas, an attacker would. And an attacker who may have made millions of dollars in crime in the last couple of years, if you remove their ability to make money, they're probably not going to say, well, I'll take my money and just go away. That was it. It was a great run. Thanks. Mm-hmm. They will most likely take a certain portion of that money to invest into making more money. And that's, I think, where we largely differ from other industries, is that we are dealing with, human adversaries that evolve and think and adapt.
Is a certain amount of it the kind of equivalent about, there's a saying about the reason you have locks on your door is to keep honest people honest. Is a certain amount of it just, it's like, look, we're just trying to make it unfeasible monetarily.
You're trying to deter people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually don't know if deterrents work that well, right? So if I look at it through my lens, if I were to make money, and the thing with attackers is they're often indiscriminate. They're not like, I'm going to, break into that house at the end of the street. They're just going to be like, I'm going to break into any house where I can get some money. So whether or not you have deterrents, they don't often do, they don't survey the house looking for, are there alarm systems, et cetera. They go, I have an exploit, and I'm just going to, attack every IP address on the internet without looking at it beforehand. So there is no deterrent. They just throw the attack at the server.
Yeah, because it's so easy to do it to hundreds of thousands of people.
It scales, yeah.
Like it's easier to find someone who has little to no defense than it is to pick an a target and then attack that target intentionally.
Yeah, and so it's a percentage game. If by deterrent you say the attack didn't succeed because we have a firewall or we have I would say that that's a defense. It's not a deterrent as such. Laws perhaps might be a deterrent, but I think technical controls very often aren't a deterrent at all.
Right. I guess, yeah, it sounds like your mentality around the word deterrent is more about like, what are the consequences for doing this, as opposed to defensive mechanisms, which are like non-consequential.
Or deterrent, like what would make you go, I don't want to attack people on the internet. And chances are normal people, we don't want to attack anything. But if you are a criminal and you're already in that sort of mindset that I will break into things and steal things and cause problems as long as I make money and I don't care, I don't know that there really is a deterrent.
My brain just started going on a tangent. I was like, I wonder if we'll develop like counter firewall systems where it's like the AI detects someone is trying to penetrate the system and then it attacks them back. And that's a deterrent.
That is a very controversial discussion. It already exists. There is a notion in the security industry often referred to as active defense or hacking back.
Ooh.
And it's been a polarizing area of discussion for legal reasons, for ethical reasons, because what if the attacker isn't attacking from their own machine, but they've broken into somewhere else first, like a university. Now you're attacking back.
Right.
What's the implications of that?
It's like vigilante justice. We don't allow people like Batman to be like, you're robbing, so I'm going to rob you. You hit that person, so I'm going to hit you. That's like not how we want to function as a society. That's really interesting. That bit didn't even occur to me, but that makes a lot of sense because, like you said, what if they're on a public network or something, like they're in a location where you counter hacking them actually hurts innocent people who had nothing to do with it.
Yep.
And they could be hopping over multiple IPs. So like, yeah, you could be attacking a totally innocent system. Interesting.
How does some of this relate to some of the more recent attacks?
Supply chain, that's what we're here to talk.
Maybe since we've got an expert here, what is a supply chain attack?
More recently, supply chain attacks are generally referred to when an open source component or an update mechanism, probably update mechanism might be the better broad term, is used to deliver something malicious. Most recently, it was the Axios attack where somebody leveraged access to the Axios publisher's account to add a dependency to the Axios package, and then that dependency was a separate brand new package that was malicious. So when you run NPM update or setting up your NPM packages, it would provide a bit of malicious code. It has a post-install script that runs some commands, exfiltrate keys, etc., that could be used for additional attacks. But it's not necessarily just open source. You can go back a bit further, and there was the SolarWinds attack where the build server for SolarWinds got compromised, and everyone that updated the software got a malicious installer.
That would be very unexpected. Like from open source, you should kind of expect it. It's why we pin dependencies, right? Like, but from a proprietary system, closed source code base, you would hope that they're not getting malicious. So I guess I'm interested. How is it? Because it sounds like you're about to talk about it. How is that different from open source? Am I wrong in thinking that I should feel more safe from a closed source?
I wouldn't say it's different from open source. It's not a dependency. So you're updating a software package as opposed to updating a dependency.
Right.
That was mainly the key difference.
But I'm guessing it's vulnerable to similar things, right? Like if someone has the signing key for... Because my understanding is a lot of the time with these proprietary software, like you've got Adobe, you've got this software installed, you're running an update, it's often a good security mechanism is to do a hash of the version so that the version you're downloading is the exact same source code that they published. So is closed source, or not closed source, but like, what was the word that you used? Not dependencies, but...
Software package.
Software package.
Yeah.
So is it vulnerable in the same way that someone... if they have that hash, then they can just put up whatever they want and the system will download it? How would someone... Actually, maybe we don't want to talk about how someone would hack those things, but I guess I'm just curious. They have all the same similarities in terms of vulnerabilities and things like that.
They share a lot of commonalities. So they're all code. They all execute. And so if you put something malicious in that code, that malicious code will run. The actual mechanisms, whether it's sort of, NPM will be slightly different from PyPy, will be slightly different from, a Ruby gem or a Perl CPAN module. But essentially, they're all code that gets downloaded to your computer and then run. Now, the mechanisms for NPM tends to be post-install because it's super easy. You just put in like a bash command. But that doesn't mean that you couldn't necessarily update the JS file to contain the malicious code. It's just sort of the methodology or the individual attacks are contextual, but sort of broadly speaking is you're downloading code from the internet and you're running it on your machine. If I'm able to put malicious code in there, then my malicious code runs.
Yeah. Thank you. You mentioned post-install, and I think it's worth mentioning when we talk about like an attack vector like that. I think it's always good to mention what's the recommendation for how to protect against those things. So you talked about dependencies. I mentioned pinning your versions so that your renovates and things don't automatically grab the latest version, so that you have a little bit of a time window where you're validating that it's safe. You've got SNCC or something that's going to scan it, make sure it's safe before you actually install it. You just mentioned post-install scripts. I know about that one. I've seen that issue before. Correct me if I'm wrong. Can you disable post-install scripts from running, or is that just it's there? It's how NPM works, and we can't control it.
Pretty sure you can.
Yeah.
As like for CI/CD, like you
can put trusted ones and stuff now.
Yeah, there's also a no install scripts flag or something where you can completely ignore them for CI/CD if memory serves.
Cool.
I'm not a JavaScript or a Node expert in any way, shape, or form. I do, however, know that I don't know if it's configurable everywhere, but things like Cloudsmith or PNPM, I believe, do not run post installs by default.
Nice.
It doesn't stop someone from then shifting the code into the JS file. So it's sort of one of those things where you change one thing, but then the attacker will adapt. Like I said, they're not static. There's also some other things that you can do besides pinning. You can do aged verification, so that when there is an update to a package, you don't apply that update until 2 to 3 days has passed or a certain amount of hours. Quite often these things do get detected. I saw there's a company who does supply chain security called Socket.dev. Their blog post said that they detected the malicious dependency in Axios within 6 hours.
Not bad.
But when something has 100 million downloads a week, 6 hours is still a lot of installs. That's their detection window. Then they issue a takedown request, and then someone eventually actions that, and then so what the actual exposure window in total was is larger than that.
How does one go about trying to prevent that from as opposed to other people trying to fix it? Is there anything anyone can kind of do to help prevent it? Or
I often say that things in security are proxies for other problems. Antivirus is a proxy for the halting problem. Disclosure vulnerability debates are proxy for patching strategies, etc. But I think this again comes down to being a proxy for the halting problem, because programming languages are Turing complete. You can make the code load dynamically as opposed to being statically written, which makes analysis much harder, while you can still run it in a sandbox. Sort of the problem is that we don't have good methods for knowing what code is going to do before we run it. It's classic. So ways to make code more auditable. You can run it through a static analysis tool. Chances are it'll throw a bunch of false positives, noise at you. I think the other problem is in the ecosystem, a lot of practices such as having a post-install script that runs curl some URL and pipes it to bin sh is very common. And so how do you tell good behavior from bad behavior if everyone sort of just does those type of YOLO?
yeah,
which is code execution.
That's why a lot of people are not big on static code analysis, right? Because a lot of things do things that are going to get picked up, and you're like, how much time do you want to spend chasing red herrings?
Well, or the fact that you can't tell. So one of the things I do think people overlook is if you have something like that fetches something from a URL. If you load Facebook, you're not going to see the same content as I do when I load Facebook. right? URLs aren't static. So how do you determine, even if the package is good, that doesn't mean that necessarily the server hosting the content couldn't get compromised. So again, that's potentially a way that you can attack things that have pinned dependencies.
Ooh.
So again, it's one of those things where it just there are hard edges around these problems. And the other thing is, supply chain security has never been better than it currently is.
It's always getting better, right? Like
it
every
is
time
better,
we find something, we solve that thing. It sounds like I have an analogy in my head. It's like we're just adding bricks to a wall between us and malicious actors, but somewhere down the wall, there's bits we haven't built yet.
Again, perhaps the answer is if code was more auditable, then perhaps that would have been detected earlier. We see a lot now about AI, and like AI can find bugs in this thing and that thing. Not to distract us into the merits of AI vulnerability hunting, but there are certainly certain things that it is very good at finding, certain patterns, and it does scale way better than humans. And you could potentially throw AI at the vulnerability problem, but then to your point about the wall, someone has to actually fix it. And can we equally well throw AI at the defense side? I saw a comment recently that said, the gamification of vulnerability discovery has worked really well. You look at bug bounty programs, et cetera. People are incentivized to find vulnerabilities, publish the information, or share it with the company. However, the fixing of these problems has not scaled very well. It's a variant of the defender's dilemma, where some people say, attackers only need to be successful once, and defenders only need to slip up once. I don't like that analogy as much, because I think it's kind of false. But another way to maybe look at it is attackers move at the speed of innovation and creativity. Defenders move at the speed of change boards, customer uptime requirements, committees. So
it's like the it's like the startup versus old guard problem that exists in business, right? It's like when you're the old guard, like SEEK or real estate.com.au or any of these big companies, you naturally move slower because your job pivots from attacking opposition by producing new features that they can't, and you pivot into protecting the features you've built. And that's kind of what you're describing is attackers aren't constrained to the same, they don't have board meetings, they don't have councils in the office that they have to talk to.
Or maybe they do.
Or maybe they do, but the speed at which they can operate is faster than corporate entities usually.
Take a step back. So because we talked about supply chain attacks and Axios specifically, and it's like, cool. So you've run malicious code, you've been hit by the attack, but now what? The problem is that then you get things like a second stage of the attack where it's like you get a remote access Trojan or something that gives the attacker an easier window into your machine to then do whatever they want later.
Like they've got your key. That was step one.
Yeah.
Step one was getting your Google Wallet or getting your API key or getting your OpenAI key or whatever, your Anthropic key. And then now they've got the gold, now they've got the chest, and now they're going to try and get into the gold, right? So like what's the first steps that you do? I mean, I know a few of these things myself, but I'm interested from your perspective. What would be the first 5 things that you would suggest anyone do if they suspect that they've fallen victim to one of these supply chain attacks?
Great. So obviously on a corporate level, contact your security team, right? A lot of organizations like SEEK, we have a cracking security operations team, great at instant response. They'll handle all of that for you and follow the right processes and procedures. On an individual level, like if you're just a uni student or something, rotating all of your keys should be up there, but you probably want to remove or potentially reinstall your device, because chances are you might still have a remote access Trojan or an info stealer running on your machine. So you change your keys, it just uploads the keys again. You haven't accomplished anything. So changing your dependency, lock file settings, making sure
switch
that you
to a
have
good one, switch to a good version.
Switch to a good version. Maybe reinstall your machine. Like ideally, if you have something like Docker or whatever, and you can just throw it away, that's good. If it's on your local machine, it may need a bit more digging through, or potentially a complete reinstall.
It's a good recommendation to use Docker. I recently was playing around with OpenClaw and I immediately put it into a Docker container because there's no way that I want to let that thing just have access to my machine. So that's a very good pro tip for people. Yeah. I don't know if Docker is free for individuals. I think it's free for students. So yeah, anyone out there who is building small APIs for themselves, maybe Dockerize it, containerize it.
Yeah, or if you don't use Docker, there are other options with virtual machines that are free for.
Buy a new computer, just throw it away.
Yeah.
Use Terraform and free instances on AWS. Like, there are options. It's very easy to just run things on localhost, though. I'm going to say I'm often lazy too.
I did eventually put OpenClaw on my machine, but I did a fresh Linux install and I was like, there's nothing on this machine I care about.
Yeah.
Which is basically a VM.
That's always my favorite. When it's like, it's my dev machine, it's like nothing is on that machine. I didn't do banking on that. I didn't do anything important. It's just a machine that has access to the internet. But like, who knows? Maybe there's crypto miners running on there that I don't know about.
Yeah, I mean, people you don't think about. I mean, I would think this is maybe one of the common things that people think about is if they get access to your machine, what's the thing that they can probably use against you that makes you the most vulnerable? And a lot of the time it's photos.
Yep.
Photos of you and your family and stuff like that. Or ones that you took of yourself to send to someone.
For extortion crimes? Yes,
yeah, absolutely. That's a pretty common one. I've seen it happen to friends. It's brutal.
Yep.
Yeah. And now it's getting, anyway, I don't want to pivot too much. Now it's getting worse because they can AI generate pictures of you. Now it's getting really bad.
Yeah, you don't have to breach someone. You just go.
Just make one. If it's convincing enough. So did you want to talk a little bit more about the what to do, how to respond?
Was there anything else? You said top 5 things. You said one thing. Was there anything else that people could do to?
We said 2 things. We said containerize,
things. Oh, great.
kill your system, reinstall, clear your machine.
Consider using some form of edge packaging or switching to PNPM or options that don't necessarily run post-install scripts.
Those are all the ones that I would have thought of.
Yeah.
That's the big stuff.
There is also more movement in terms of VS Code extensions being backdoored, etc. I don't know that there's really great solutions other than taking care and practice. Pay attention. A lot of the time, the weird behaviors do get detected by humans. A great example is the XC package that was backdoored a while back, presumably by a state actor who had a persona called Geotan. They submitted some code to this crypto library aimed at backdooring SSH, and it got spotted because one of the maintainers in one of the Linux distros was running it and observed an increase in the amount of processing speed, or this is running slower than it has in the past. Let's debug. What's the new lines of code that is slowing this down?
That is a hilarious thing for an engineer to find.
Yeah. No, and
just being so fussy. Like, how dare you consume more of my compute? I'm going to find out what you did to your code, and then it turns out it wasn't actually them making bad sub-performant code. There was something else running.
Yeah. So looking at logs and observing behavior, knowing what processes are supposed to run, etc. That is very handy because it'll help you spot when something is different. Obviously ran some sort of malware defense on your machine. Like, you might not detect it straight away, but at some point you would imagine that the known hashes for these packages end up in antivirus, and so you'll get alerted that, hey, you have a package on your machine that is malicious.
I selfishly want to ask you, do you have a recommended software suite for individuals to install on their machines, like an antivirus suite? And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I once again, for the 100th time in my life, fell into I installed something and it installed Norton, and now I have Norton on my machine. And I know that this is a business podcast, but that has been one of my most top 3 gripes in tech over my lifetime, over 20 years working in IT, networking, and now software, is Norton being packaged with stuff and me not realizing I've installed it. And now it's in my machine, and it's kind of hard to uninstall.
Yeah.
I generally say, for individuals, Windows Defender. If you're not on a Windows operating system.
Plot twist, Windows Defender.
Yeah. It's gotten really good. I've
gotten really good.
I've been fine with no antivirus for a long time because I just trust Windows Defender these days.
I just trust Norton,
So I think, what was your recommend? I think we didn't actually get to that.
Windows
what was your
Defender.
Linux recommendation?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask.
What's the software for Linux that you would recommend for antivirus?
probably not going to recommend a commercial solution, so let's stick with Clem maybe. Linux is different in terms of hiding. A code execution on Linux is harder than hiding it on Windows or potentially Mac OS.
Why
Because
is
of things
that?
like sudo or?
Privileged stuff runs in the kernel, the way drivers are handled, the just-in-time patching options, etc. It's probably also a bit harder on Mac with some of the signing. Windows have signing too. Not really my forte. We just break things.
Interesting. Linux tends to be safer. Mac, good luck, have fun. Windows, Defender is good. That aligns with my understanding and how I've been using these machines all along. Before we go, was there anything, do you feel like there's anything that we didn't cover that you really want to get to on supply chain attack stuff while we still have a couple minutes?
It's a gnarly problem. It's not something that you easily solve and probably has as much dependency on people as technology.
Nice. I like that. This has been another episode of SEEK Bytes. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
We'll catch you next time.